I serve as the communications director at Lifebridge Christian Church in Longmont. I've been there since the summer of 21. It's actually my first ministry job. Moved up from the Dallas area, and I worked in the corporate world there, and I just got very burnt out with dealing with problems that I didn't really care about. So when we decided we were moving, I was only applying for ministry-specific jobs, whether that was at a church or another nonprofit. So that's kind of how I ended up through Lifebridge. I got connected through Slingshot. So I worked in a similar field because I was in like marketing and events in the corporate world. And so working within communications, there are a lot of similarities just in the regular realm of like communicating in general. What does that look like? Website, social media, emails, all of that sort of stuff, texting. So there are some similarities in that area, but the biggest like refreshing piece was I'm getting to serve people who are dealing with really hard things. And so a lot of the people that we're seeing come in right now are people who don't have a relationship with Jesus. Maybe they've never been to church before. They're struggling with addiction, sexual assault, like just found out their spouse is having an affair. So they're dealing with all these really hard things. And I think that's probably the most rewarding piece, is just being able to work with these people directly, you know? Yeah. I don't know if this necessarily surprised me, but I do feel like sometimes when people look at a church staff, they think, oh, what do you really do throughout the week? Like, you just have like Sundays and you don't really have a ton of stuff going on throughout the week. But the culture that we have at Lifebridge, it's like we're all leaders who are serving on the staff, and we all work incredibly hard to move our ministry areas forward and working together to make sure we're really meeting the needs of the community. So first, are people getting connected? When they walk in the door, are they meeting somebody? Are they taking a next step? I think a big part of it is spiritual formation. Since a lot of the people that we have coming in are new to their relationship with Jesus, or maybe don't have one yet, is there spiritual formation happening? Or like baptism is a big one. Are they starting to serve? Are they starting to give? Because all of these things kind of make up the bigger picture of, I'm growing in my relationship with Jesus. Am I discipling anybody one-on-one in my personal life outside of the church? Because it's just, church is like one time a week, but what does my life look like outside of the church? I think that really would be the biggest piece. So in 2019, we had a lead pastor change, and then 2020 was obviously COVID. So there were, not just COVID, but outside of that, there were a lot of changes that were already happening. And so they kind of went through a phase where the culture was very consumeristic. And so they were getting rid of a lot of the programs. It's like, this isn't really moving the mission forward. Like, we're appeasing a group of people, but this really isn't moving the mission forward. And so they went through a process where they stopped all of that. They got rid of all of that. And then when I started was when they were really in the process of rebuilding. And so in the fall of 21, so just shortly after I started, is when we launched groups. They had done groups in the past, but not for a few years. And so we've seen a lot of growth through that. And how we operate groups is the group is getting too large, so somebody within the group steps up to lead another one. And so then they'll step off and lead another group. And we've seen a lot of growth in that, and just people like having the one-on-one connection with people outside of the regular Sunday and doing life with that person. And then outside of that too, we just launched Keystone groups, which are a little bit different because say I'm the leader. So I'm the leader. I'm inviting people to come in on my group. It's not something where people can just come in whenever they want to. And it is it's a commitment. So you're saying for this year-long commitment, I'm going to be a part of this group. And it's really, the max is going to be about 4 people. So the max is I would have about 3 people in my group. And it's very specific one-on-one discipleship. I'm showing you how I argue with my husband. I'm showing you what we do with our finances to move the mission forward. I'm showing you it's very specific pieces about your life for discipleship. And I think that's an area that we really need right now because of the people that we have coming in right now. I think one of the more difficult pieces is our online community. So, a lot of churches in 2020 started doing online church. And it's, while it's been very good, and I do think that we have an online community that has other community outside of just the hour that they're going to be online for that Sunday. I think for a lot of people, because I've had individual conversations with them, it becomes a bit of a comfort zone. And so that is a more difficult piece. And so we utilize a texting service too. And so people will text in for prayer requests and whatnot. And one of the things that I've seen for that too is for some people, it also becomes a bit of a comfort zone. I can text into this person that I don't know, and I know they're going to respond to me with a prayer request. And so for a lot of those people, for texting example, I'll try to help them take an easy next step of, hey, is it okay if a pastor gives you a call this week? Or just anything like that, like an easy next step that they can take. And for some people, it's we haven't really gotten there yet. Like they're still doing the same thing. It's still a bit of like a comfort zone. But then for online specifically, I think it's that same sort of thing. It's trying to make that like personal one-on-one connection with those people. And that's where I've seen some growth. There was one woman in particular, and I remember she would watch online. I don't think she came in person. And then occasionally she would just leave very negative comments just over random stuff. Like there was one week she didn't like where the drum setup was. And so she would just leave these very negative comments, and I was trying to like message her through Facebook, and like sometimes she would respond and sometimes she wouldn't. And eventually I got to the point I was like, okay, there's got to be something, like another deeper layer here. And so I don't remember exactly what I said, but I tried to just be very blunt and honest with her and say, like, hey, I've noticed you have a lot of complaints with certain things. Is there something else going on? Like, is there something else? Would you like to meet up for coffee? Maybe we can talk about it. And I found out that, like somebody in her family had just gotten murdered, and she was going through the process of like, she was having to go to court and whatnot and go through all of this stuff. And so I feel like part of it is the one-on-one connection is where I've seen the most growth with those people. Just because when you are in a state of like, you're in a comfortable spot in a comfortable area, unless it's through like the grace of God or like the Holy Spirit or something, I feel like one-on-one connection is sometimes the best. Yeah. So when I first started, one of the most difficult things to go through is there hadn't been a communications director in my role for a while. And so everybody kind of did their own thing, from kids ministry to care. They did their own communication. And so when I stepped on, it was a change for everybody. And some people I don't think took it very well, because I think sometimes people think with my specific ministry area, because it's not getting a host moment spot from stage, then my ministry area must not be as important as this ministry area over here. And that's really not the case. And so what I tried to do was, because if you communicate everything from that scale, nothing's really getting communicated, right? Nobody's listening to it. And so what I really tried to do was create rhythms as to, okay, what are we communicating? When are we communicating it? And why are we communicating it? And so For example, from stage and then social media, it's our two biggest avenues to reach people that are maybe necessarily like outside the church. Social media for obvious reasons, and then for a Sunday service, like somebody who maybe is coming in for the first time or like watching online for the first time. And so if it hits 80% of our audience or more, it gets communicated there. Men's events, women's events, like those will get communicated from stage and then from social media. And then some of the more specific areas like so some of our care ministries, we have like a divorce care group, grief share, celebrate recovery, and whatnot. And occasionally we will do social media posts for them to because everybody's struggling with something a little bit different. But most of the time we'll do very targeted communication through emails and whatnot to groups that we know specifically are struggling with those things, because we're going to when you do that, you're hitting a better audience that's actually going to listen to you. Email rates, I would say that we actually have a fairly high open and click-through rate. And I think a big part of that is we're sending very targeted emails. We're not just sending mass emails to everybody that this doesn't have anything to do with you. And so I would say it's typically, depends upon the email, maybe between like a 50 and 75% open rate. And those are still important to measure like any other analytics, social media and whatnot, because you want to know what's working and what's not working. And then maybe from there you can figure out, okay, why isn't this working? Is this not important to them? Are they not dealing with these things? You can find more information from that data. We were on Twitter when I first got there, and our engagement rate and what was happening on Twitter was just non-existent. Like my philosophy with social media is there's so many different avenues that you can go down, but especially being a single communications person on the team. Again, when you're trying to do everything, you're really not diving deep into anything. And so I removed Twitter, and we're now just focusing mainly on Facebook and Instagram. And we I think have seen more growth in that area because we're able to, again, do more targeted stuff and spend more time focusing on those specific areas rather than adding something that maybe we don't need. And then as far as adding in something new, so we just moved to Planning Center, and that's been a huge help. And then we're on Text and Church right now, but we're going to be moving into Clearstream because they integrate more with Planning Center. And that's been we're hiring for connections director right now. But then right now, before we have that position, there's a lot of connections that I've kind of taken over that I'm taking care of within Planning Center specifically, and like the workflows and getting people connected. And we were in CCB before and we weren't really able to do that. And Planning Center has been a huge help with that, just with being able to create those workflows and making sure that nobody is dropping through, nobody's going through the back door. Like we can see specifically, like, this person has not been followed up within a week. Why is that? Like, what's happening here? I think a lot of times, like going back to church online, when you can see people are like sitting in those comfort zones and it's like you're doing everything you can to try and reach those peoples. At a certain point, it's really up to the Holy Spirit, right? And I'll go more into the data, but I feel like first and foremost, it's really got to start with like prayer, And I think I notice when, I'm getting to a point in my job where maybe I'm feeling like slightly burnt out, or maybe I'm feeling like nothing I'm doing is working. So why am I even in the right role? Like, what am I doing? I feel like for me, the first thing that I go into, it's like, okay, where am I at in my like relationship with Jesus? Where am I at in my prayer life? Am I specifically praying for these people, or am I just trying to get something done to make me look better in my job? And so I feel like that's where I would start. normally in that situation. And then outside of that, I think it's really important, especially since I came from the corporate world beforehand. This is my first ministry role. What's been really helpful for me is being able to talk to other people who are in my role at other churches, and not even just at other churches, but like at other organizations. What are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's not working? And I think that's what's been incredibly helpful for me, because you're able to see other insight outside of your church.